Welcome to today's Talk channel on OneMusicNetwork.com. I'm Lee Perkins, and this is the program Lee Perkins Unplugged. My guest, his name is Lorenzo Harris. Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, whatever time of the day it is, wherever you may be listening. I just want to say, Lorenzo, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lee. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Let's fast forward into your present-day company. Your building services, the name of it is, once again?
The name of the company is Janico Building Services.
Does it have any particular significance, the name Janico?
Janico is actually an acronym for janitorial company.
I see, yeah.
Yes.
That makes sense. That's pretty basic. That's pretty simple. At what point did you feel like, did you go through any adversity, any challenges that either made you feel like, okay, it's time to start a business? And basically what I'm getting at is maybe you did take on a job that you just felt wasn't a good fit, and you had other aspirations because you said you didn't have the aspirations as a young man. What pushed that?
Well, my introduction into entrepreneurship was actually a little unique. I was working in the computer industry prior to the PC era. Back in the early 80s, I was working for a company called Wang Laboratories at the time in the Bay Area. And because my wife and I couldn't afford a home there, because it's
astronomically expensive,
incredibly expensive,
yeah,
we found a home in Sacramento that we could afford.
Yeah.
So we moved to Sacramento, bought a home here, while still commuting to the Bay Area for my day job. And it didn't take long for me to realize that wasn't quite working out for me. The commute was probably close to 2 hours one way.
Yeah.
And after about 6 months of that started to wear on me. And so I was looking for other opportunities in Sacramento.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to secure a transfer of my existing company. And so after some networking, I actually stumbled across an opportunity with a mutual friend who was looking for some help in his janitorial business. And the way he structured it was, and I was perfectly willing to work for someone else, but his proposal was to come to work for him, but as an independent contractor. And okay, fine. We worked out the details, and that was my entry into the janitorial industry.
Did a light bulb come on and say, I need to make this a company that I will be able to take into the future?
It wasn't until I worked with the other company under his umbrella. It took a number of years before the light actually went off that, hey, you know, I can actually make this a business, a viable company, and grow it to the point where it is essentially today. So in the meantime, I learned a lot working with this person. I learned the ins and outs of the business, the operational side primarily, and before at some point I ventured off on my own. And by the way, I should say my wife was with me all along, because we were working together in the business from day one, actually. Because once I accepted the opportunity and worked for a while, I realized that I needed some help.
Right.
So I went to my wife. I approached my wife, who was a homemaker at the time, and a wonderful one, I might add. Perfectly content staying home, cooking, cleaning, and taking care of the kids. And I said, listen, I have this business opportunity, and I'm not going to be able to do it by myself. Can you work with me and help me with it? And she was more than willing to do that. She was a trooper, as they say.
Yeah.
She rolled up her sleeves, and we went out. And in the initial stages, we essentially went out and cleaned buildings by ourselves.
Now, one thing I know our listeners, as we get into the makings of a small business, This is today's talk. I'm Lee Perkins on the show Lee Perkins Unplugged, and my guest is Lorenzo Harris. He is the CEO and proprietor of Janico Building Services. When it comes to the mistakes, and we talked about this off air, when it comes to the mistakes that you see others make when they go into small business, let's identify some of those things. Mm-hmm. And just off the top, what do you think about when it comes to the issues that those individuals out there that all of a sudden they want to walk away from their job and they want to create a business,
right,
and they just fall on their face because of simple issues, and I just call them mistakes and miscues. What are some of those mistakes and miscues that you think that those folks that run into that they make?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I've made many of those same mistakes.
I didn't want to point fingers, but I'm glad you volunteered.
I don't think any of us entrepreneurs or small business owners are immune to these mistakes. They're common mistakes for a reason, because a lot of us are doing it or have done it at some point. And just to touch on a few, and following up on the example you just gave, an individual working full-time job, working in corporate America, wants to venture out on his own, start his own company. And I have had individuals approach me for my advice who were in this same situation. And one thing that I've always said to them is whatever business you're proposing to start, one of the biggest reasons for small business failures in this country, and by the way, small businesses fail in this country at a rate of 50%. 50% of small businesses failed in the first 5 years.
That's almost like the divorce rate. It is.
Exactly.
It's sad.
Exactly.
That's sad.
But it's even worse in California.
Yeah.
In California, small businesses are failing at a rate 65% higher than the national average.
Oh, my goodness.
So it's especially tough on small businesses here in California.
Yeah.
And so having said that, one of the reasons for that is lack of experience.
Naturally.
So a person who's leaving a corporate job to start their own business, what I advise them to do is to spend some time. If the business you're starting is not in the same industry that you've been working in, I always advise them to work for a company for several years and learn the business first. Then venture out on your own. Because without that experience, it's going to be very difficult to be successful. The other thing that I would advise prospective entrepreneurs is to honestly assess whether you have the qualities to be an entrepreneur.
And in other words, what does that mean?
Now, when I say honestly, because transitioning from corporate America, from a cushy, secure job, or relatively secure as it can be in this economy, to an entrepreneur, it's apples and oranges. No more is your salary guaranteed. Entrepreneurs, as we discussed earlier, you're going to fail often. And so in order to continue to be successful, you have to have a lot of resilience. You have to have the qualities to fall on your rear end, get back up, dust your pants off, and keep going.
That I understand. That I do understand.
You must anticipate failure, and plenty of it.
Anticipate it.
You must anticipate it. Absolutely.
Wow. That's pretty heavy.
Again, 50% of startups fail within 5 years. That's a lot of businesses.
It is. I see restaurants popping up all the time. 6 months later, they're gone. All the time. Restaurant business is one of the toughest businesses.
The most difficult businesses. Yeah. Absolutely.
And I see shopping centers built by these corporate entities. In 6 months, that shopping center is vacant.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, now it's an eyesore on the city because you've got this vacancy. And these are corporate. Now, you or a listener, as a single individual, when corporate has to go up against the wall and throw things to see if it's going to stick, and they fail, you ain't doing too bad, because if they got mega millions to spend and you're just trying to work with whatever you have, don't let that discourage you.
Absolutely.
Because if the big boys fall, they fall all the time. And you just have to realize, as a big boy, you can fall too. But as I always say in football, it's how you get up and run the next play.
Well, I got one word for you: bailout.
Bailout.
Okay? If Fortune 500 companies are coming to our federal government for assistance to save their businesses, we're not immune to those same failures.
Oh, I see. Okay. Lorenzo Harris is our guest. Today's talk is the channel, Lee Perkins Unplugged. He is a business owner that is giving us some inside tips to entrepreneurship, starting a business, the steps that you're going to want to take. We're talking about the mistakes and miscues. Any other that comes to mind, that those that's in small business, or you yourself personally, that you look at that was a mistake? Over purchasing?
Well, we mentioned earlier financing.
Okay.
And capital. And that is one of the other top reasons that small businesses fail in this country, undercapitalization. So there is a cost, a monetary cost, to starting virtually any business. My business happens to be a low capital startup business. So I was able to get started with very little money. But even in my business, and for most other businesses, there is a significant capital outlay. And so if you want to start a small business, then you must anticipate that, and you must start your company with sufficient capital so as to be able to weather, basically to operate and pay for your day-to-day expenses, payroll. That's a very, being able to pay your day-to-day expenses just to operate your business is huge, and you must anticipate and plan for that.
Did the and this is the dirty word that most folks don't like to hear about, and that word is called taxes. Yeah, I see how that changed the tone of the conversation. So many don't take into account that aspect, and that is the most important aspect, I would think.
Yes. If you're coming from a corporate job, you become accustomed to the fact that your employer is withholding your deductions and paying your taxes. Well, when you become an entrepreneur, you're responsible to do that yourself, and that is a huge, very common mistake that startups make, particularly sole proprietorships, is they don't do the necessary paperwork, file their taxes, report, and do all the things that they need to do to satisfy the IRS.
Right.
And I've had this discussion with my kids on numerous occasions, and the one thing I tell them is there's two people that you absolutely do not want to cross. One is the mob, and the other is the IRS.
They're almost two in one. They're almost the same. Except the IRS won't break your legs, but they'll break your bank account.
Absolutely. They'll get you.
Yeah. I mentioned taxes because a friend of mine who is looking at nightclub ownership. And in that nightclub ownership, the one thing that is holding him back is how he calculates his taxes based upon the liquor sales. And he finds that to be very complex. So he has stepped away from it for a moment till that's something he figured out. And I have to give him kudos to him because he is, as you mentioned, he's researching his business or his next step without just jumping into it. Because as I often allude, we can't always do things that we are fascinated with or that we are in love with.
Well, there's a common expression or a common belief that you should start a business based on your passion, something that you love to do. And there's some merit to that. But I've always felt that there's a difference between your passion and whether a venture is viable in terms of earning a living. Right. So sometimes you might have to settle for your passion being a hobby, and your business being something that you can actually earn a living doing. And those two may not necessarily. Sometimes it can be the same thing.
Yeah.
But very often it's not.
Right. I spoke a moment ago about the Small Business Administration, which they've got the group SCORE, which are retired business executives to business owners, that will sit down and help you go over certain aspects of your business. And it's always great to be able to bounce off of somebody that you know. How do you feel about interacting with fellow business owners and being able to learn from them?
Oh, that's an excellent question. And one of the survival skills of being in business, the buzzword is networking. And there's several different reasons to network. The two main ones would be education, and the other would be to prospect for new business. And so when it comes to my peers in business, that's where associations come in very handy. Every industry has a group of companies within that same industry that combine to form an association. The purpose of the association is to educate its members and to support their members. And so I think that's very important for business owners to do. Because when you come from a large company, you come from a corporation, that company serves as a resource. They provide support, they provide financing, they provide the market, all of the things that you need to be successful in your job, your company provides for you. Well, once you venture out on your own, you don't have that anymore. You're out on an island, as it were. So the way that you can fill that void is by joining your industry association.
That is very powerful when we talk about the buzzword that you mentioned, networking, which has really taken a role of its own, because now we are finding network mixers every other night, and you have to stay in tune to your business community, whether it's a business the same as yours or nothing like yours. You never ever stop looking to find out as much as you possibly can. Learn as much as you possibly can to gain knowledge. We all understand that knowledge is the power. But in these networking forums, if you will, they're quite valuable.
Absolutely.
Very, very valuable. And back to the Small Business Administration, did you have any association with them at all?
Yes, actually. Our company was in a program, an SBA program called 8A program, SBA 8A program.
What is that?
It's a program that mentors and nurtures small and predominantly minority-owned and woman-owned businesses.
Is this what they used to call the set-aside programs?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's one word for it.
Yeah.
Yes. And so the purpose of the program is to help small, disadvantaged companies to grow, and they provide educational programs and support to assist them in learning how to be more efficient operationally, how to market their services, and so forth. And it's a tenured program. So I believe you're in the program for 6 years, at which point you graduate. Don't quote me on the exact time frame.
Yeah.
But we are now, we've graduated probably 10 years or so ago, and they have a program called that SBA calls the Mentor Protege Program, whereby graduated companies like ours come back to the program and they mentor a new company into the program.
So it reciprocates.
To reciprocate, assist them, and also to partner on contracts. So the benefit to us as a mentor is we can take advantage of the 8A status of a startup or a smaller company, and we can partner together to secure business from the federal government.
And did you specifically, and I know so many folks, when you mention Small Business Administration, they automatically think about, I'm going to get a loan.
Right.
And so many aren't aware that the loan portion of the Small Business Administration is a very small function of what they actually do.
Yes, that's one service that the SBA provides to small businesses. Again, it's just one of many services. Our company has not secured SBA funding.
You did not secure the funding.
We have never secured SBA funding. The paperwork has been streamlined somewhat over the years, but not too long ago the paperwork was exhaustive. And so it just we never entertained that. We secured funding elsewhere.
You know, and I wanted to make that point because when I say the funding for the Small Business Administration is such a small portion, but it was the training programs, the association, the 8A, whether you are being mentored to or you are mentoring another potential business owner. That's something that I want our listeners to be able to understand, that as you investigate and recognize these things, you too can very much be like Lorenzo and seek out the knowledge that SBA is sharing. And it's free, no charge. Is that correct? No charge for the...
Oh, no, absolutely no charge. A lot of work involved, particularly in the 8A program, which brings me to another important startup point. In order to get into the 8A program, the requirement is that you submit them a business plan, which is probably the most important thing a new business startup can do, whether or not you're applying for the 8A program. Just starting a new business, every new business should go through the process of developing a business plan. This is a very important step in your life, starting a business.
Is a business plan?
A business plan. Anything, it goes without saying, if you want to be successful at anything, planning is key.
Right.
And when it comes to business, the business plan is your roadmap, is your plan for how you will not only operate the business, but how you're going to be successful down the road. So that is absolutely essential to do. Even if you're not securing funding, most people think you need a business plan to get a loan. Well, yeah, you do. But even if you're not trying to obtain a loan, just going through the process of developing the plan it goes a long way towards your future success in that business.
I wanted to be the devil's advocate for a moment.
Please do.
Every now and then, I got to be a dummy when we talk about a business plan, because you can have someone who's going to open up a mobile car wash detailing, and they're thinking, what do I need a business plan for?
Right.
And it might be, well, hey, if I was going to have 12 employees and I was going to open up a check cashing center, maybe that business plan might be more valid in that. But I'm opening up a mobile detail car wash, and it's just me and Ray from down the street, and thinking, what do I need a business plan for? But they need one just as well as the one that is going to be a vast operation.
Absolutely. And when I say a business plan, it does not have to be 30 pages long. It doesn't have to be an extensive plan. It doesn't have to be all encompass. It doesn't have to be an all comprehensive plan.
Yeah.
A business plan is your roadmap. You're starting a new venture. You need to address certain issues. How are you going to operate your business? How are you going to obtain customers? How are you going to get customers? How are you going to generate revenue? Are you going to hire people? How many people are you going to hire? How many people are you going to need? There are a lot of different decisions that need to be decided on in order for you to be successful in running your business. And a business plan addresses all of those issues. You're going to have to do it anyway. Whether you do it mentally or you put it in print. There are several different issues and numerous issues that you're going to have to address as a business person. I say put it in writing, because down the road you're going to want to recollect that information. If you have it in writing, you can easily refer to it.
I am speaking with Lorenzo Harris, and he is sharing with us his inside information within his business. I just want you to be able to elaborate on anything that has come to your mind when you were thinking about this interview that we were going to have, the questions that I was going to ask, and the questions that I haven't asked. I just kind of want you just to feel free to share with our listeners those thoughts.
Well, I'll share with you an experience, and one of the things that I learned through the years. One of the benefits that I saw of starting my own business was independence. And I've always been an independent person, and the idea of owning my own company and being my own boss really intrigued me. That excited me, and as it does most people, I would think. But once I got into business, at some point I realized that I'm not really my own boss, and it hit me when I had a disagreement with a customer. The customer was wrong, and a debate ensued, and I actually won the argument, but I lost the contract.
Because the customer is always right, even though the customer was wrong.
Well, yeah, we hear that. We hear the customer is always right. I always say the customer is not always right, but it's how you deal with the customer when they're wrong is what matters. And so when I lost that contract, that was the first time it really hit me. You know what? You're not your own boss. You traded one boss for a lot of bosses called customers.
Your customer is the boss.
Absolutely.
Your customer calls the shots.
Yes.
You got to please your customer.
Yes.
Like he's your boss. And if you want a promotion, take care of the customer.
Yes.
And you may see that promotion.
Yes.
In so many different ways.
So that was somewhat of a reality check for me. So if you're thinking of going into business because you want to be your own boss, think again.
You're not. In true reality, you're not.
You're not.
I do recognize that, and I think that is a very, very great anecdote, great story. Well, on that note, let me transition this for a moment. But on the note of starting new businesses, has anything popped into your mind in terms of, because I recognize that you are an innovative person. You've got the innovative brain, never stops thinking. And I know that while I was visiting, your son has a business that he's getting going, and you've helped mentor him in getting him started or pulling back the reins, either way that it may go. Has anything crossed your mind saying, you know what, I think I can handle another business. I can do something else.
Well, you know, that's funny you asked that, because I actually do have another business. I run a sports high school sports website. It's called NorCalPreps.com, and this particular business covers high school sports in all of Northern California, all the major sports, and we also offer a scouting service. I started that company back in 1999.
Oh, my.
In the infancy of the dot-com era. When internet media was just getting off the ground. And the company that I'm partnered with, Rivals.com, who is currently owned by Yahoo Sports,
Yes.
they had a vision that sports coverage would eventually be online. And that's basically where we're heading.
That's incredible. To be on the ground floor for that. Is that something that you just work individually, or you have a staff that works
Yes,
that?
yeah, we have a staff, small staff, but we have a contingent of scouts who go out and cover the games and evaluate players and so forth. We have a writing staff that actually writes the articles that we upload to our site on a regular basis. And then we have a support network being partnered with Rivals.com that handles the platform, the technical aspects of running the sites and so forth. And we are networked with, we are just one of a network of sites throughout the country. So we have a high school site in every state in the country. Similar to OneMusicNetwork.com, actually. So it's a network. We have a high school site in every state in the country. Every major college program in the country has a website in our network. And we have recruiting sites on the network. So if you're into recruiting coverage and who's going to which college and so forth, we have that on our network as well.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are speaking to an entrepreneur. Lorenzo Harris is his name. Let's give the website for Janico Building Services for those that's interested, so they can go in and check your website out.
The URL is janicoservices.com. That's JANICOSERVICES.com.
As we close, any final words that you would like to express about potential business owners or existing business owners or anything that we have not touched throughout this conversation that you've been dying to get off your chest or something that's on the tip of your tongue? Just share with our listeners.
I will add one point that we didn't touch on earlier in closing. We talked about how when you go from a job to being self-employed, you exchange one boss. You exchange your boss for your customers. And I would just advise startups to consider diversifying their customer base. Now, and not to be too dependent on few customers. We learned that the hard way. Business comes and business goes. Through no fault of our own, we've lost business. We were doing great work. Customers loved us, but because of either because of the economy, because the person who hired us lost their job, or for any other reasons other than to no fault of your own, you can lose business. So my advice is always to never be too dependent on one or a few customers. Diversify your customer base. That way you will be more secure.
This has been fantastic. I've enjoyed this conversation.
All right.
Lorenzo, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Lorenzo Harris, CEO, proprietor of Janico Building Services, and he is the man today on the Lee Perkins Show. This is Lee Perkins Unplugged on today's talk at OneMusicNetwork.com. We'll see you the next time when we will talk about everything under the sun, everything you thought you wanted to talk about, but were afraid. You keep it right here to OneMusicNetwork.com.